Hi, everyone. I'm Jess, and I'm the content manager here at Course Report. Course Report is the resource for helping people find the right coding bootcamps and programs for them. At Course Report, you can research the best coding bootcamps all over the world, find out which technical skills to learn, where to apply, and how to fund your own bootcamp experience. Today, I am so happy to have Katz, who is a software engineering instructor at Fullstack Academy, talking to us about AI and coding careers, basically breaking down the myths and the realities. So thank you so much, Aaron, for taking the time to chat with us today. I wanted to start with this first myth, being that AI is replacing software engineers. So Aaron, in your understanding of it all, do you feel like AI is replacing software engineers right now?
So there's this article that's been floating around my tech feed for a while, and they're Bill Gates. You know, he's not that famous. He only started Microsoft, which is pretty much used on every computer. He came out with 3 fields that will not be replaced by AI. And I was kind of shocked that number 1 was software engineering. What he said was software engineers are going to have to evolve to work with AI, but AI is a long ways away from being where it can operate independently of software engineers. And I joke around when I talk to my students a little bit about it, because I can see when my students rely too heavily on AI because their code breaks and they don't understand why it's not doing it. So AI is a great tool, and it's going to change changing the field. Software engineers are going to be writing more code, spending less time doing research, because ChatGPT and Gemini and all the great tools to help with research, but they're not going to replace software engineers.
Thanks for breaking that down for us. So since it's not replacing software engineers, I'd love to know how AI in 2025 is being integrated into the daily or the weekly workflow.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine's a project manager, and we've been friends for 5 years, and we've had this discussion. And in any software company, there's this rift between project managers and software engineers. Project managers, their job is to get the product as quickly as possible. Software engineers is to release the best code possible. And as a software engineer, you're taught, when you get a work item, be honest with yourself how long it would take, and then double it. And that's what the project manager has to go with. And they know that you're padding. So you have extra time, so you look good. If you say, I think it's going to take me 1 week, you say 2 weeks, and it takes you a week and 2 days, you still look good. And it was something that he was always complaining about to me, because he had no way of doing that. Now with Gemini and ChatGPT and GitHub, now he has the tools. When someone says it's going to take 2 weeks, you can look at them, it's like, really? What's going to take that long? Because research doesn't take that long right now, because you have great researching tools. What AI is a way to research and test code in less time than it took before. And it decreases by at least a third the amount of time writing code. So that's how it's changing the field. As a software engineer, you need to understand how to work with ChatGPT or AI, and you also need to know when it's giving you bad answers. Because the way that AI works is that it learns from all the information on the internet. One of the 2 ways that I can tell when my students are using ChatGPT are when they're using use state in React, and they're creating these infinite loops. And once you're in the course, we'll talk more about how this works. I don't want to give away the secret sauce right now, but it's really easy to create a loop that just continually runs and freezes up your program, because you say, hey, when this happens, let me know. When this happens, let me know. Well, if you say too many of, well, this happens, it's going to continually update and feed off each other. So if A depends on B and B depends on A, every time A runs, B runs, and then A runs are going to run again and again and again and again. And that's something that I've noticed a lot of students who don't know how to use state correctly. And when I do my lecture on state, I show 3 ways to use state, and I say this way, the way that I'm showing you right now, is generally the way that you're going to use it. If you use it these 2 ways, I can tell that you're looking at resource or ChatGPT that you don't fully understand. Because there's some ways that you have to use use state that way sometimes, but it's more the exception than the rule. And then the other one is in terms of using API calls. These are just two ones that I know very obvious that I see from my students. There's a lot of, for the last, I'd say 5 to 7 years, promises, which is a pretty clean way to call other APIs, others, trying to think of a good word for non-technical people for APIs. If you're calling, let's say, another service, like a database out there that's not your database, or another website that's basically making an API call. And promises is a really clean way that someone can look at the code and it's simple to understand. And there's not it does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. But promises, which are, they can get ugly pretty quickly. And there's a lot of tinkering that you have to do to get them to work properly. They're still common. So if you ask AI how to do an API call, there's a good chance, and this is from personal experience, when it shows you how to do callbacks, and then you say, okay, how do I do that using a promise? And then it will give you something. So if you don't know the correct terms, if you don't understand software engineering and best practices, there's a lot of bad code, and AI will repeat that bad code for you because that's what it's been modeled on. It's like, oh, okay, you don't want common code, you want good code. So you tell it specifically what it wants, and it'll give you good answers. I've been working on a personal project for about 3 months now. And through this, I've learned how to have actual conversations with ChatGPT as I would a coworker of mine, back and forth. Hey, what do you think of this schema? And then it responds. I'm like, no, I don't like your answer because of this. What about this? And through interactions, I've been able to get what I find. I've been able to learn a lot and get really solid code. But if I just accepted what it gave me, there'd be a lot of code that would be problematic.
So many excellent points there. I'd love to dive a little bit into the top tools in 2025 that software engineers are employing in this like daily, weekly workflow. You mentioned ChatGPT seems to be a big one. And then I think you were referring to like GitHub Copilot.
It writes generally generic code. If you have a better understanding of what the code does, it writes some repetitive code for you. For example, a call to a database where you're using a call that says, if this doesn't work, throw an error. What Copilot will do is then write, after you do that call, hey, check out the response, and if it doesn't work, throw an error. And it's repetitive because you've already done that. As you grow as a software developer, you have your unique style of writing code, your preferences. And Copilot is a very generic, and it's functional. But I wonder how well it can specialize, just from what I've seen from this. And again, this is my personal opinion of it. I'm sure there's people who use Copilot and love it, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. I like writing my own code. I have my own unique style that I write code. And I think it very much symbolizes, if someone looks at my code, what kind of person I am, what kind of developer I am. When other developers, like when you look at code that someone wrote from Copilot, you can tell very easily. And if you're looking at someone's projects and you're considering them for a position, and they say, okay, this person relies heavily on Copilot, and you question how are they able to solve basic problems. Again, I read a lot of software engineering blogs in my newsfeed. And one of the big problems that they're noticing from junior level developers, and this isn't from boot camps, it's also from universities, is that new developers don't have the basic problem solving skills that they had 5-10 years ago. Because 5-10 years ago, when you got an algorithm, even if you looked at the solution, you had to reverse engineer it and figure out how it works. If Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT tell you what to do, and they break it down in such a way that you don't need to analyze it, it stunts your growth as a software developer, where your first instinct is going to be to look something up instead of solve it yourself. But what if the solutions don't work for you? Because oftentimes you'll find code out there and you'll have to finesse it to get it to work for your situation. And if you're not able to finesse that code, you're going to have a lot of problems as a software engineer.
Aaron, I feel like you made such great points in there, especially about just like it's going to take practice, even though we may think of AI tools as a way to sort of quickly create code or research. We will still have to practice at using those tools to get the best results. And also you pointed out the individual and personalization is still a really important part, and having your own style and your own unique way of problem solving and creating code. So I love that you pointed those out. Even though these AI tools can be helpful. I would love to dive now into the second myth that I feel like I've been seeing bubble up in the internet. And that one is that, AI tools is really just being used at like really big companies right now. I'd love to know your take on if you feel like it's just limited to the big companies, or if it could be used at any level, startup, small businesses, what have you.
Any level, if you work for a big company, you are going to be limited on which AI you can use. They're going to want you to use their proprietary AI in terms of large scale. And each AI has its strengths and its weaknesses. And every AI has its own pros and cons. Some are better in one aspect than the other. And working for a small company, you get to choose the tools. This is why I like working at smaller companies. I've worked at large companies, and you usually have to work within their bureaucracy, which can be a little problematic for me. I kind of like to color outside of the lines a little bit. So if you're working for a small company, any AI tool that you want, you'll probably be able to use. Obviously, check with the company. Don't just start downloading things on the company your company computer. But generally, they don't care. They just have this get it done mentality. Larger companies, I think, are more limiting because they're going to want you to use their proprietary products. And sometimes they do that at the expense of their own.
Such a great point that the AI tools are going to be different wherever you are, a big company, small company, and dependent on those like specific companies. The next myth that I was seeing was just that the idea that only data professionals need to understand artificial intelligence, or LLMs. Do you feel like software engineers should have any understanding of machine learning, LLMs, AI?
Yes and no. What you need to understand is the pitfalls of using AI and LLM and all the other machine learning. Because if you don't understand the pitfalls of using them, they're not perfect. They learn off of human data. Humans are not perfect. As I listed before, shortcomings of using ChatGPT. If you ask, so I used ChatGPT, I asked him for UI, user interface, how to set up web pages so they look nicer because I couldn't think of a good design. And it gave me one of the ugliest designs I've ever seen. And it's not there yet. It might be at some point 5 to 10 years down the line, but it's a long ways off from the design that I saw today. I would never implement something like that. So understanding the pitfalls are really important. Also, what I teach and what Fullstack does a really good job at is not just in my class do you learn how to do a full stack application. You learn how to learn tech, which is a very difficult skill, but I see this with my students when they come in the first month, the first couple weeks, so nervous about making a mistake, don't understand how to read documentation, a ton of just holding their hand. And by the end, they understand how to look up documentation, how to tinker with code. And what they've learned over the course is how to learn tech, which is such an important skill because software engineering, any AI engineers, data engineers, it's a constantly growing and evolving field. So you need to learn how to stay up with most modern tech. Although a lot of companies say they have AI when they just have a bunch of if statements. It's been a big joke for years. So also be wary, I guess, of companies that say everything is moving towards AI. It's a buzzword. People don't fully understand it. I think I've had to explain to my 83-year-old mom about what AI is because she's freaking out that it's going to replace everyone and everything. And it's just not there. It's nowhere near there. So, be wary of people who talk about AI like it's a fix-all.
I really appreciate that you're pointing out that even with all of the new AI tools or, companies saying we're integrating AI, good software engineering continues to be a real cornerstone of the career of the field. So with that in mind, how is Fullstack Academy preparing like these new cohorts 2025 and onward for this current software engineering field?
So, as I mentioned before, I talk to my students about how to incorporate, how to use AI, have conversations with AI. And there's still students, and no matter how many times I say it, who copy and paste code from AI and come to me when their code breaks and they don't understand why. And there's this moment where I say, "You used AI, didn't you?" And they deny it for a second, and I look at them and they're like, "Yeah, I did." And I model for students how to have conversations, how to understand what it's saying, how to get the best possible answer to it. Because part of it is you have to be a prompt engineer. You have to know how to interact. And that's something that we've evolved our curriculum as just part of acknowledging. We've had conversations about what to do with ChatGPT because it was a worry that students would just go there and copy and paste code. But you can't tell students not to use these that are there because, we're remote learning and and they're looking things up and you can't be hovering over them 24/7. So we talked about how to integrate them properly. This isn't about, writing a master's thesis that's partially plagiarized off someone else's research, because part of open source code is incorporating other people's code into your code and improving on it. I've had whole conversations with students about don't memorize code, look things up. During demos, I go to different websites all the time where I pull whole chunks of code and I put them in. Then I change them around so they work for my code. Because if you memorize code, I mean, unless you have a photographic memory, you're going to make a lot of mistakes because there's a lot of room to forget. When you're going off memory, you can forget certain words, you forget the semicolon, can forget a lot of different things. But if you have your resources that you can go to and you can be like, okay, this is the code that I've used and put that in, fantastic.
You mentioned earlier about students also incorporating AI as they were building projects. You're talking now about sort of the cons of when they're using AI and it's not quite working out for them as they're learning software engineering. In your experience, what are some productive ways that full stack students have been using AI either for projects or just, sort of the daily homework?
So I know I've talked a lot about the pitfalls, but I have had students you interact with AI and create very cool animations. I had a group of students that for their final capstone project did a gambling website, and the roulette wheel really spun. They had a slot machine, right? And then what was it? The craps where you actually threw dice. And it was really amazing. And they did a lot of this with no prior knowledge. And it was through tinkering with AI and looking at instructions out there, because figuring out that amount of, especially of styling, is very difficult and time consuming, and it saved them time and made them more productive. So there are good parts to it. I have had a fair amount of students who've incorporated it. It's just a matter of being smart how you incorporate it, taking what it has, understanding what it gives you, and being able to tinker with it.
And you've taught a few cohorts now. So I would love to know sort of your opinion on why employers continue to like hiring full stack academy graduates.
I'd love to say it's me because I'm such a great instructor. But I do think that we get some very serious students who are very driven. I have a student in one of my cohorts right now, and I can't believe she has no software experience. Just her drive and how great she's been doing. And I had a conversation with her because me and her had a conversation about what she wants to do once she's done here, how she wants to pursue her career. And, I have 10 plus years of experience, so I tend to know a little bit about the field. And I said, I'm like, but you've probably taken a couple classes. She's like, no, I have no experience. My jaw just dropped. We attract some very talented, serious students who put in the effort. I give this talk on day one. The number one indicator of how well you'll do is the amount of effort that you put in here. I call them ringers, where you have a little bit of code background is great. It definitely helps you out. Being talented, but the amount of students who've had no background in coding, who just came in and said, I'm going to learn this and put their trying to think of a good analogy here, but basically just worked really hard. And they were able to come out with just amazing, amazing capstones.
Love that. The perseverance, it sounds like, really sets, the Fullstack Academy students apart. Well, I feel like that's the perfect place to wrap up this Q&A session. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us all today. And thanks so much to all of you who are watching this. We're going to be posting a transcript of this video interview on the Course Report blog with contact information for Fullstack Academy, just in case you're inspired to apply for any of their upcoming cohorts. In the meantime, you can follow Course Report on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. And if you're a Bootcamp alum, please don't forget to post a review of your Bootcamp experience on Course Report. Your review is a huge help to anyone who's thinking of getting into tech today.